Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the 18th meeting of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, and I ask that you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first matter on today's meeting agenda is that of the approval of the minutes, and I recognize Commissioner Powelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have reviewed the minutes of the September 17th public meeting, and I recommend that the minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Powelson with a second by Vice Chairman Coleman. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. At this time, I recognize Cheryl Walker-Davis, our Director Special Assistance to Office of Special Assistance, to run us through our meeting agenda for today.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
May it please this Honorable Commission, on behalf of your various offices and bureaus, we present for your consideration and disposition the following agenda items, commencing this morning with matters on behalf of the Bureau of Audits. It is recommended that the Commission adopt the first item, that is, the release or making public the audit report with regard to the Philadelphia Gas Works Stratified Management and Operations Audit, noting the statement of Commissioner Powelson.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Coleman, second by Commissioner Whitmer. Any discussion? I will call on Commissioner Powelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me first start off by thanking our Bureau of Audits, in addition to, again, the work that was led by our Executive Director, Jan Freeman, on the PGW study. Before the Commission for consideration here this morning is the Bureau of Audit's recommendation to make public the Stratified Management and Operations Audit of the Philadelphia Gas Works. The audit, in my view, is insightful, and I'd like to highlight a few portions of it here this morning as it's consistent with some of the themes that were recommended in our report this past summer. The issue of at-risk mains, both bare and cast iron, continue to be a top priority for PGW and this Commission. Our staff's report of April 21st of 2015 recognized the extensive amount of pipeline replacement that needs to take place, along with the high cost of urban pipe replacement. Staff concluded that the other large NGDCs are replacing at-risk pipe in an aggressive time frame. More recently, we had a report, and I think we'll approve it here today, the LTIP of the of PECO Electric. And the staff believed in this report that PGW should be no different. Staff maintains that safety should not be compromised. Therefore, PGW's objective should be to strive to replace its at-risk pipe and at a rate closer to the average of other Pennsylvania natural gas distribution companies. In the audit before us, recommendation 7-7 urges PGW to accelerate high-risk main replacement. And I think, again, in their filing as a result of our work study this summer, have agreed to bring that high-risk main replacement down into a 30-year replacement schedule. Now, in response, PGW has explained that it intends to increase main replacement spending to a projected level of $50 million in 2016. And I'm confident that PGW understands the grave importance of this issue, and the Commission will continue to monitor these efforts. PGW's agreement to employ a greater number of outside contractors for leak-related evacuation response work in response to recommendation 7-9 is a much-needed improvement. And again, I commend audits for outlining this recommendation to us here this morning. Now, on the subject of security, both physical and cyber, there are some issues that the audits team had brought to our attention. And in the effort to address this, PGW has agreed to perform a penetration test and vulnerability assessment annually under recommendations 3-9. There is also improvements for PGW to make in the area of consumer complaints and late billing under recommendations 8-6 and 8-9. The audit reports that the level of customer complaints has been increasing at PGW. PGW has agreed to undertake a root cause analysis, which will be completed by the end of calendar year 2016. Moreover, the audit recommends that PGW reduce back billing. Timely billing, obviously, is of critical importance. PGW has agreed to reduce high-cost gas supply assets such as storage, and they are no longer necessary to meet peak demand and to increase reliance on low-cost local supplies from the Appalachian Basin under recommendation 7-3. Finally, in closing, I note that PGW accepted, at least in part, every recommendation outlined in the stratified audit except for recommendation 4-1, which deals with the perennial suggestion to improve PGW's governance. And I reference back to the 2008 report that was conducted by the Pennsylvania Economy League and the PUC Charitable Trust, where they outlined 5 findings, and one of them happened to be this whole issue of the convoluted governance structure. With more than 30 elected and appointed officials who have a critical role in PGW's governance, a system that increases cost and difficulties. This has been outlined by third parties and now more recently by the Public Utility Commission here this morning. And PGW does not disagree with the recommendation, and I fully understand that it's the onus lies with Philadelphia City Council and the legislature to make these needed changes. And I understand again that PGW is not in the position to accept this recommendation. However, I think it's critically important, as some of these action items are agreed to today as part of the audit finding, that we continue to urge city officials, city council, and others to address the inefficiencies and convoluted governance structure that hinder PGW's ability to invest adequate amounts of capital and also accelerate the replacement of cast iron bare steel. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Powelson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Continuing with the presentation of matters on behalf of the Bureau of Audits, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the next 2 recommendations with regard to the release of audit reports pertaining to Pennsylvania Electric Company and Metropolitan Edison Company's non-utility generation charge for the 12 months ended April 30th of this year.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Powelson, second by Commissioner Whitmer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, commencing on page 2 of the public meeting agenda, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff's recommendation with regard to the first matter pertaining to the complaint proceeding of Wayne Storage Company.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Whitmer, second by Commissioner Powelson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
With regard to the 2 formal complaints next referenced involving Core Communications, Inc. versus Verizon Pennsylvania LLC and Verizon North LLC, there is the motion of Commissioner Whitmer.
Do I have a motion to call up the staff recommendation for consideration?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Powelson, second by Vice Chairman Coleman, and I recognize Commissioner Whitmer for discussion for her motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like my motion entered into the record as if I had read it in its entirety. Today, we are considering and disposing of both a joint petition for partial reconsideration filed by Verizon and a motion for consolidation filed by Core Communications. Verizon's petition requests partial reconsideration of the Commission's opinion and order entered in May of this year to include a condition rescinding the requirements of the September 2011 Commission order granting emergency relief to Core. Corps' motion for consolidation requests that the Commission consolidate the above referenced proceeding with another pending case involving the parties. Consistent with the joint motion from May, I reiterate my interest in bringing this case to conclusion. In May of this year, the Commission determined that this case should be remanded on a limited and expedited basis so that the parties could address a very specific but key issue, which was the changed circumstances of the February 15, 2015 FCC ruling to determine its impact on the intercarrier compensation issues in this case. Unfortunately, the May 2015 expedited remand was delayed because of the filing of Verizon's petition for reconsideration, requesting that a condition in a Commission's September 2011 order be rescinded. It's extremely disappointing to me that the limited remand could not move forward in this proceeding so that a finite set of issues could be resolved as quickly as possible. Conclusion of this prolonged dispute benefits both parties as well as the Commission. I am also concerned that the parties have not seriously considered some of the directives set forth in the Commission's May 2015 order, including using the provisions for dispute resolution in the existing including using the provisions for dispute resolution in the existing interconnection agreements to engage in good faith negotiations in order to resolve this multi-year litigation. In an effort to move this case forward and to effectuate the Commission's May order, I recommend directing that the limited remand, as previously articulated, be referred to OALJ for evidentiary hearings. If necessary, and the AOALJ issue a recommended decision within 60 days of the entry date of this order. As a result, Verizon's petition for partial reconsideration of the Commission's May 2015 order and Corps' motion for consolidation should be denied. In addition, I remind the parties that the Commission's September 2011 emergency order at this docket remains in full force and effect. Therefore, I move that the joint petition for partial reconsideration filed by Verizon and the motion for consolidation filed by Corps be denied. The June 6, 2013 recommended decision and Office of Special Assistance recommendations submitted for the May 7, 2015 public meeting are held in abeyance during the limited remand proceeding in this docket. Third, that the limited remand ordered by this Commission on May 28, 2015 for further deliberation of the FCC February 15, 2015 declaratory ruling be completed by the Office of Administrative Law Judge with further evidentiary hearings, if necessary, and culminated with issuance of a recommended decision within 60 days of the entry date of this order. And last, that the Office of Special Assistance prepare an order consistent with this motion. Thank you.
We have a motion by Commissioner Whitmer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Place. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. On the staff recommendation of this matter as amended by the motion, any discussion before we take the final vote? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Continuing with matters, recommendations on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, it is recommended in omnibus fashion that the Commission adopt the recommendations commencing with that in the proceeding involving the PUC's Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement versus Keystone Auto Locators LLC, appearing at the top of page 3, through the remaining items on pages 3, and the first 2 items on page 4, concluding with the recommendation in the complaint proceeding involving Dennis Hinkson versus Pico Energy Company.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Place, second by Commissioner Powelson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation in the proceeding involving the interconnection agreement of Commonwealth Telephone Company, Frontier Communications, and Commonwealth Telephone Company, LLC, and Blue Ridge Digital Phone Company, noting your statement, Madam Chairman.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chairman Coleman, second by Commissioner Powelson. Under discussion, I will just note that I will be recusing myself from voting on this matter because I have a brother that is employed by Frontier Communications. So any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes 4-0, noting my recusal.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services. With regard to the first item at the top of page 5, we recommend the adoption of the staff recommendation in the proceeding involving PECO Energy Company's petition for approval of its long-term infrastructure improvement plan and distribution system improvement charge, noting the statement of Commissioner Whitmer.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Coleman, second by Commissioner Place. Any discussion? All those, oh, I'm sorry.
Statement.
I'm sorry, I get into the groove of things.
That's all right.
I'm going to call on Commissioner Whitmer for her statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, the Commission considered PECO's long-term infrastructure improvement plan, through which PECO will significantly increase capital investment by approximately $274 million over the next 5 years. PECO's LTIP also includes a conceptual plan to construct one or more pilot microgrids in its service territory. PECO indicates that these projects could be potential alternatives to traditional transmission and distribution solutions, and that the company is focusing on areas where the projects can provide significant benefit to diverse customer segments and critical facilities. Given that innovations like microgrid technology may help enhance reliability and resiliency, I am encouraged by PECO's proposal. I would, however, note that there are broader implementation of microgrid technology that is not without its challenges. To name a few of these include the rate structure, questions about ownership of generation and maintenance of the microgrid, especially in deregulated states like Pennsylvania, and the issue of cross-subsidization, given the traditional customers could arguably shoulder a greater portion of the cost to maintain the system when some customers shift over to a microgrid. I am hopeful that PECO's pilot, if effectuated, may help shed some light on how we can effectively address some of these challenges and issues. I applaud PECO for this proposal, and I look forward to further details as the company evaluates these projects and develops a plan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitmer. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
In omnibus fashion, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendations on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, commencing with that in the application proceeding involving Enernoc Inc., and continuing with the remaining items on page 5, as well as all items appearing on pages 6. And the first 2 items through and including the recommendation in the proceeding involving PPL Electric Utilities Corporation's letter of notification pertaining to the 230 kV transmission line in Montgomery Borough, Lycoming County, on page 7.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Whitmer, second by Vice Chairman Coleman. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Well, just a note, there was a second over here by Vice Chairman Coleman, so I heard his, so I called on Vice Chairman Coleman for the second. I do apologize to any of the commissioners if I hear someone that's louder,
Simultaneous.
they get the call.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation to make public the quarterly earnings report.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
I heard Commissioner Place to move, but I heard Commissioner Powelson, so do you want to second it?
I'd be honored to.
Motion by Commissioner Place, second by Commissioner Powelson. Any discussion? No. If no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Continuing with matters presented on behalf of the Law Bureau, commencing on page 8 of the public meeting agenda. With regard to the first matter pertaining to the rulemaking involving paperless billing fees and the staff recommendation pertaining to a final rulemaking order, there is a joint motion that you have, Madam Chairman, with Vice Chairman Coleman.
Do I have a motion to just call up the matter for consideration?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Powelson and second by Commissioner Place. I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chairman Coleman to preside momentarily.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I would like to recognize Chairman Brown for the purposes of our joint motion. Chairman Brown.
Thank you. I do have a joint motion of Vice Chairman Coleman and myself. I would ask that our motion be read into the record in its entirety, and I will summarize it for your hearing. This motion adopts staff recommendations to prohibit jurisdictional public utilities from charging consumers to receive a paper bill for their public utility service under the general provisions of the Public Utility Code. The motion also relies on record facts and supplemental legal provisions of Chapter 30 of the Public Utility Code applicable only to jurisdictional telecommunications public utilities to support that result. Section 3011 expressly declares that it is the policy of the Commonwealth to maintain universal service at affordable rates. Section 3011 expressly states that the Commission is to ensure that service is available to customers on a non-discriminatory basis. Section 3019B2 contains the Commission jurisdiction over the ordering, installation, suspension, termination, and restoration of a telecommunications service, regardless of whether the service is price-regulated or competitive. Section 3019B2 retains Commission authority to establish additional requirements necessary to protect customers. The record shows that 28% of Pennsylvanians are elderly, and 50% of those persons have no computer or lack consistent internet service. Moreover, about 25% of Americans lack consistent internet access. Finally, 80% of Americans oppose an electronic filing only system, and 90% of Americans prefer a paper bill for service. A rule permitting a charge or fee for a paper bill is particularly hard on the elderly and low-income groups of consumers who do not have internet access. That result undermines universal service. Those consumers who have to pay a charge to get a bill because they lack the internet access needed to get a no-charge electronic bill. But even if they had reasonable access, which they do not, the vast majority of consumers want a paper bill and oppose an electronic-only bill. Our motion supplements staff's commendable work product by explaining why this prohibition should apply with particularity to jurisdictional telecommunications utilities. This is needed given their opposition to this rule, despite the fact that Chapter 30 of the Public Utility Code, which is applicable, despite the facts, and Chapter 30 of the Public Utility Code, which is applicable only to them. Therefore, we move that the staff recommendation be amended to include the above referenced legal and policy reasons prohibiting all jurisdictional public utilities, including telecommunication public utilities, from imposing a paper billing fee, and two, the Law Bureau prepare an opinion order consistent with this motion.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, second to the motion, please.
So, second.
Any discussion? Any objections? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0, and I will return the proceeding to Chairman Brown.
On the matter as amended by the joint motion, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
In omnibus fashion, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the remaining two Law Bureau recommendations appearing on page 8, commencing with that in the proceeding involving performance metrics and remedies, and continuing through the items on page 9 through and including the recommendation in the declaratory order proceeding involving the Pennsylvania American Water Company and the desire to have certainty with regard to its authority to serve the Spring Lake Crest development in Delaware Township.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Whitmer, second by Commissioner Powelson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Office of Administrative Law Judge, commencing on page 10. In omnibus fashion, it is recommended that the Commission adopt all of the recommendations of the Administrative Law Judges, commencing with that in the proceeding involving Wanda Fields versus PUC Energy Company, and continuing through the items on page 10 and 11 through the proceeding involving PUC Energy Company's purchase gas cost rate proceeding and the recommendation to adopt the settlement.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Coleman, and I did hear Commissioner Place as the second, although we had a joint second, but he was louder. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
With that, having concluded the regular agenda, we now turn to the carrying agenda. It is recommended on behalf of the Office of Competitive Market Oversight, as well as the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, that the Commission adopt the totality of the carrying agenda.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Powelson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Coleman. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, that does conclude the presentation of agenda items.
Thank you. I would note before we close out that Commissioner Place did an excellent job today.
Thank you very much.
His first meeting, and he fit right in. Thank you. We also would like to ask those of you that are here if you could remain for a few moments. We do have a reception for Commissioner Place to welcome him here to the commission, and I know that all of you would like to be able to introduce yourself and to meet him personally. So with that, if there's no further items to come before us, the meeting is adjourned.